Hope everyone enjoyed the lunch. We have a really exciting talk coming up that will wake you up if you are feeling a tad sleepy. Really excited to have Chetana Deorah. She is a product design leader and mentor who helps empower human-centered design to achieve high-impact business goals. Most recently, she was the design director of growth design at Netflix, where she led the product design for global acquisition and growth with a focus on emerging markets. Before that, Chetana was at Yahoo, Scribd, Pivotal Labs, and Pentagram, just small companies. If you've signed up for, and I think we've all been there, if you've signed up for free Netflix trials, initially and then ended up converting, of course. So there's a high chance that you did stumble into one of Chetana's growth design experiments. And so she'll be talking about much more about that on growth-driven design and the few critical areas of focus for leaders and teams to help evangelize a customer-centered approach to solving growth design problems. So let's have a big round of applause for Chetana Deorah.
Thank you. He can pretty much do the talk. All right. So hello and welcome back, everyone. We're going to kick off this afternoon chatting about leading design for growth. And since it's quite impossible that in this lifetime I'm going to get the chance to be at an Oscar stage, I'm going to take a few moments to just thank everyone who's been part of this journey with me. In putting this talk together, the DesignX community and Preet, a huge, huge thank you for what has been an inspirational 24+ hours, and to all of you as well. Thank you. So a few of the themes I hope to cover today are growth, when it was in its inception to what it is today, the role of human-centered design, the very core of why we are here, and from my years of leadership, what are some of the levers that I can share with you all in leading product design for growth. Last but not the least, we'll touch a teeny bit on some of the future trends that might further accentuate why a human-centered approach to design. But first things first. Later in the evening today, it should be very easy for any of you to pat me on the back and call me my name. With 3 syllables, it can get pretty tricky. My name is Chetana. It's a Hindi name, which is loaded with the meaning consciousness or awareness. And when written phonetically, this is how you would say it. A little bit about me. Most recently, I was leading growth and acquisition for Netflix. These were some of the focus areas I was working on. I will dive into that a bit more later. I'm originally from the hustle and bustle of Mumbai in India, but I've been in the San Francisco Bay Area for a good 19 years now. And outside of product design and leadership, I do commit my time for design education and yoga. So if I see you all sleepy, we're going to do yoga poses. Some of you in the audience might connect with me on this bonding fact, which is I have a genetic disposition that really makes me dislike cilantro. So let's dive in. I'm often asked this question in my journey as a design leader, what is it that I need to have in terms of skill sets to become a growth designer or a growth design leader? Is it very complex? Is it a unicorn? Is it different? And as I was putting this talk together and reflecting on my own journey and my own career from an individual contributor to a design leader, I wanted to share with you what I noticed. So here's a snapshot of my journey. I've only picked the 3 companies that I thought would be relevant for the conversation today. So looking back at Yahoo, I was there for a good 7 years. As I say to many of my colleagues and friends, I grew up at Yahoo. Things that design school did not teach me, Yahoo did. And while I did work on many of the product UX and UI challenges, there was a moment in time when my manager and mentor at that time recognized that many of the Yahoo search products, even though they were really cool product experiences, were not getting the traction with the customers because their core value proposition was not understood. At that time, we were working with an agency model. So whether it was Yahoo Search, Yahoo Mail, Yahoo Messenger, the communication for the feature launches would happen with an agency. And we were soon to realize that the nuances of the product design was such that we needed to bring that communication strength in-house, and I was asked to lead what was then called the Product Marketing Design Studio within Yahoo. So here's just a snapshot on the left of how we launched some of the features. And I got to play this interesting role, which turns out in 2007, I sketched this up, that says experiences created, experiences communicated, and experiences received by the customer is what the product marketing design studio team was doing. Fast forward, I landed at Scribd. Scribd is a digital reading subscription app, and I was brought in there to lead the end-to-end design experience, which basically included building the product experience, which is the mobile apps, iOS, Android, and the mobile web and web desktop. So it was a cross-platform initiative. And my role involved discovery of the various content types on Scribd, as well as the growth, because Scribd was an interesting situation where we had a lot of traffic coming in. Because we had user-generated content, you could find the top politicians' tax returns on Scribd. Not the best way to create trust, and Michael did tell us that yesterday. But what that meant is you could find all this user-generated content, people would get what they wanted, and then they would leave. So we had what one would call a leaky bucket, or a growth problem, a churn problem. So at a place like Scribd, where I had a single design team working on end-to-end experiences, it wasn't like I could be fully immersive in the growth problem solving as I got to do at Netflix. So I just want to call out, depending on each company's product market fit and the stage that you are with your team, growth could be a dedicated time within a quarter. It could be 2 designers on your team with half a PM, or it could be an entire team of 14 like I had at Netflix. I also was responsible for brand and research that made it sort of a complete holistic design team. And now we are at Netflix. So it's been a very fortunate journey for me to have landed here and have the honor to lead what was a very matured and ripened growth team and experience. So I was able to bring in these years of product marketing design, product design, and me touching upon growth at Scribd to my work at Netflix. As you can tell, for a growth design leadership, working across platforms and across channel is very ubiquitous. Our work is not so much, I'm going to hire a mobile designer or a web designer, because growth channels are driven by the impact of the strategy that you want to convey. On the bottom, you're seeing the ways in which the growth team was set up. So I worked with my leadership on the reorganization of the various areas of focus. The audience growth, sign-up, payments and partnership, new member experience were the areas I was responsible for. And I had a dotted line partnership with messaging, which basically means emails and notifications, and acquisition marketing. These 4 buckets is where the cross-functional pods were set up so that we could connect with our Netflix customers depending on their level of maturity with Netflix. So I want to just pause with those 3 examples with my own career journey and share with you that for many of us in the audience today, we've probably been solving growth problems for as long as we know. It's just like when we started with the design profession, we were graphic designers, and we became web designers, and what are we called these days? Product designers. Probably the trend will change. So solving for growth, and I just want to put up this word because that is the growth mindset connotation to growth, which is personal growth. And then what comes to mind when you look at the word growth from a product point of view or a business point of view? Probably some or all of these. For folks in the audience who've been on growth teams and or who are curious about solving growth problems, it is everything from growth hacking, the one word that I'm going to work through in the next few minutes, certainly conversion, acquisition, retention. More recently, I'm hearing things like expansion, customer base. So while all of these are true and intrinsic to solving for growth, I want to offer to you what I have learned in my years of working with growth teams on how might we look at growth when it comes to product-led. Folks who have been on growth teams love formulas because we want to work with metrics and have measurable outcome. So if growth is an outcome, which I believe it is a combination of measurable impact. So I'm not saying that I'm going to be hand-waving and just saying, oh, I feel good, or I did a great design job. In combination with fully solving for customer motivation, that equals sustained growth. I really want to call out the nuance between momentary wins and incremental growth versus sustained growth. And that's really the genesis and pitch of my conversation with you all today. So this is for those who geek out on equations. For those of us who don't, another way to look at how I define growth is that it's about myself, yourself, and each of us who's a customer of a product or an experience. And the core value proposition of working on a growth team is to be able to provide value. It's important for that thing to drop down. So that's another way to describe it if the formula is just too much for you to digest. At the end of the day, there are those folks in the room who are awesome at building the products, at creating concepts, at doing innovation, and then there are those of us who can take that awesome product idea and then find a way to connect the value of that product to the customers where it's most relevant. There are many channels and ways in which we can solve for growth problems. There are probably many of us in the room who have worked on growth strategies that are marketing related. There's SEO, there's brand, sales, customer support. All of these disciplines are very integral to solving growth problems. I'm only touching upon the product-led growth, which basically means the funnel through which you bring your customer into your product experience. And I'm not diving much into the practice of growth design because there's a ton of information out there in terms of A/B testing, experimentation, tools and techniques. I'm really going to focus more on the acumen, the aptitude, and the leadership qualities. So you will not be hearing too much about percentage changed here and percentage changed there from me today. I do want to recognize, though, lost something. Hold on for a moment. I do want to recognize, though, that with all due respect to Dave McClure's pirate metrics, these stages or milestones in the funnel of a product-led growth are still very relevant. Acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, referral. For those of us who've been in growth startup, hacks, whatever, we've been through this. But what I find really accessible are the questions that we can ask, both internally to our stakeholders and to our customers, so that we can really tie these stages of a growth in a product to the key motivations with the customer, and then decide our core metrics across the stage the product is in. It's very important to recognize, and there's amazing articles written online, that growth is only relevant when your product has found product market fit. And that could be a separate talk in and of itself. And with that, just having given you a little bit preview into where growth was and what it has been, comes the slide that talks about 2009 is the best I'm aware of when growth was introduced by, some say, Sean Ellis in terms of the growth hacking world. There was a conversation at Facebook that's happened in terms of the billion-user subscriber base. I don't want to get into those facts. I just want to call out when growth started being recognized as a discipline, it was typically the coming together of product, marketing, engineering. Design was on the sidestep. Why? Why were we not really understood and didn't really make known a voice at that point? But from 2009, fast forward now to 2019, this is a snapshot of the open individual contributor roles as well as design leadership roles for growth. That has been an amazing journey of evolution in terms of the role designers play in solving growth problems and the need for this particular profession to grow. So I just want to recognize that today design does have a seat at the table. And my question is, what are we going to do with this seat? How are we going to fully own our space and our voice as we are becoming part of growth teams? And how are we going to define our role to be a core competency for business? So keep that question in your mind. So let's jump into a little story I want to share with you about an experience I led with my design and research team at Netflix. We were asked, the leadership team, we asked ourselves this question: what would it be like if Netflix had to launch in the APAC countries with a focus in Japan for the first time? Netflix went global in 2014, and it has managed to stay a single product, single code base, single team, headquartered in Los Gatos, California, for the longest time that they could. Great strategy. Actually, I should check in. Assuming most of you here are Netflix subscribers, do you remember, how many of you have logged out of Netflix? Thought so. So this homepage is for the rest of you. Yes, I didn't expect too many hands to go up. So this homepage is the logged out experience for Netflix. That was the previous homepage, and I'm going to show you what happened to this previous homepage based on the testing we did. And as you can tell, the call to action here is one single primary ask, which is watch us free for 30 days. One would think it's such a clear value proposition, why would anyone have an issue with it? So typically what a team will do is take that call to action and iterate, optimize. As we heard in the talk this morning, you can take the shape of the button, the color of the button, the typography, the font size, uppercase, lowercase. You can isolate each of these variables and test them. It is systematic. It's not something I'm trivializing. There is a lot of value to incremental wins in solving for growth. However, if the question the team is asking is how can Netflix succeed in markets where it's not doing well, this iterative test for buttons is not going to solve that problem. And let's see why. So as Preet introduced my talk saying the free trial experiment, we can fairly say in this room, most of us love free trials. Most of us. I'd like you to now come with me and meet Sumiko in Tokyo, who was one of my potential customers that my team that we went for this research met with. And when we told her about free trial, her reaction was, well, why is it free? Maybe it's not such a good product. Because we do have competitors in Tokyo, in Japan, with entertainment, Netflix being the main source of entertainment. And so she also wanted to understand, when are you going to charge me? We learned a lot of little nuances around the billing cycle for customers in Japan and the way in which the American billing cycle shows up. So there was that skepticism. We then went and met with Rohini in Mumbai. So this was a immersive research, 7 weeks, design, PM, cross-functional partners, all in market. Rohini in Mumbai was like, free trial? Sure. Why are you taking my credit card payment when you walk me through the sign-up flow? And I'm not even comfortable doing any online payment for my credit card. For Netflix, nope. I can just watch YouTube. We then came to Jose in LATAM. So Netflix does pretty well in LATAM countries because our content is pretty engaging for them. There's a lot of good, relevant stories for them to watch. Jose was like, no problem. Whether you give it to me for free or paid, I'll just share my account with friends and family. There goes my PM's growth strategy, shared accounts. And then back here with Paul in Northern America or maybe even Canada, he had no issues. He knows that it's a 30-day free trial, that he can cancel anytime, and that it's not, and he's comfortable with paying online. So as a design leader on this project and this team, and as someone who's born and brought up in India and had to go through the whole diversity and inclusion and empathy living in the US, It was an aha moment for me on the amount of leveling that had to happen in terms of the global EQ, IQ for a team that is solving for growth. Even though we all keep saying the word customers, and we all in this room and these people here are users of this product, we are all very unique. Our lifestyles and our preferences and our choices for entertainment are very unique. I have walked you through only one of the problem statements my team learned about, which is free trial. This is an intentionally blurry-ish image. There were a bunch of problem statements that came out from this design and research initiative, all of which beautifully informed the roadmap for the growth team. They helped us reframe the problem statement outside of iterating on the button. Button tests still continued, because PMs need incremental wins and numbers going up. But for the design and research team and for the growth leadership, it was really a confirmation of our hypotheses that when it comes to solving for growth, one size does not fit all. So at a macro level, this project really helped us define a roadmap or a strategy moving forward. And where we landed is, this is probably what you will see when you log out and look at the logged out homepage for Netflix today. There are a lot of changes that were made, including representing the content that is relevant for each of the countries. We didn't have that earlier. The team also went into a deep exploration for various ways in which to simplify the free trial value proposition. It was pretty much a graphic design exploration at that point. And the team also decided to partner with our email messaging team for the Japanese market, where we tested that we would send them an email 3 days prior to charging them, which was a huge win in terms of trust and their comfort to at least want to sign up with us. The biggest question that this led the team consider that we would never consider is that, do we even need free trial in every market? Is that the only way to solve for growth? So I just want to call out here, there is a time and a place when the incremental wins and the call to actions do make sense, and then there is a time and place where you have to step back, zoom out, and look at the deeper questions that need to ask. And with that, I just want to call out, through this process, not only did I have a long list of things I needed to work on with my team, in terms of the hiring I was doing, in terms of the processes that were in place, but most importantly, it became clear to me that if the product team focuses on the what needs to be measured, what the business goals are, what the objectives are, and the engineering team helps us on the how, the feasibility, and how to make things happen, we in the design world are uniquely positioned to question the why. We are also uniquely positioned to hold the what and the how together, but if no one else is asking the why, we are fully accountable to do that. And for us to do the why, we have amazing support from qualitative research, data analytics, content strategy, and QA. And that list could go on. At Netflix, I was pretty spoiled and pampered. I had a localization team, globalization team, and all sorts of nuances, which otherwise at a place like Scribd, it was all me, the one-woman army. So with that, we've covered a little bit about the then and now of growth, and my sharing with you one example, and there are many such examples I can bring up on the role that human-centered design has played. At this point, I'd like to jump into some of my lessons as a design leader on what might be some of the levers for us to drive sustained growth. The first one is invest in the acumen for growth. The word acumen, you could replace it with mindset or aptitude. I was reminded by one of the collaborators on my talk, the word mindset could be confusing with personal growth, so I just want to use this language here. So what do I mean when I say invest in the acumen for growth? I'm going to pull up 6 artifacts here, and you will notice a lot of what I'm showing here has been beautifully addressed by so many of the speakers before me yesterday and today. I'm going to try and contextualize these when it comes to designing for growth or leading for growth. So a strong designer on growth or a strong team solving for growth is one that is systematic in their approach. And I say this because growth is about being able to track your hypotheses, the variables you want to put in market, and then the results you want to get. I think of it as think like a businessman, execute like a scientist, and solve like a designer. It just is systematic. There are those designers who just love playing in the chaos to creativity. There's another place for that. Insatiable curiosity. So intrinsic to all of us as designers and design leaders. But in the sense of solving for growth, if my team did not ask the question, how might we launch Netflix in Japan, we would have never gone down that path. The questioning here requires a certain level of courage, because you've got to sometimes question your PM and your business stakeholders internally. You've got to question your customers. And most importantly, that I learned from my team is the insatiable curiosity to want to learn about cultures and global customers around us. This is a semantics thing. However, I have come to accept that there's data-driven design for growth, and then there's data-informed design for growth. At Netflix, we had a whole month of debate on this topic, which is really valuable to grow in your skills as a design leader. I will say that to you. But all I want to share here is, for us as designers, we have the ability and the tools to bring together qualitative insights and quantitative measurements to be data-informed in the decision we're going to make. A big part about being part of a growth team is being clear in your decision-making and then holding the decision you want to make, because that's what hypothesizing is all about. Resilience. This is a favorite one of mine, especially when you're leading a team of designers who are on growth, especially designers who are still new in their career, or I would say more so my favorite visual designers. I myself have my roots in graphic design, so I know what this pain looks like. When you put out a beautiful, well-thought-out visual design for a growth initiative, and in your first, second, third test, all you're seeing is failure, 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 you still need the resilience, and you need to be able to coach your designers on this is not a failure of your skill, or you're not a bad designer. There is a systematic approach in which you take this concept vision of yours and test into it. So when I'm hiring designers for growth, I'm really assessing this in my interview in terms of, do they have this acumen to be resilient and learn from the failures? I think Jared called this out. I myself am not a huge fan of continuous failure, and I do agree with him that it's no fun for me to go to my manager's office and be standing in front explaining the failure. But how do I, as a design leader, coach my designers who are all about empathy and emotion to be logical and learn from the failed tests? Can't state this enough. For a person on a growth team, even for me as a design leader, I had to reach out to folks on the marketing team in Amsterdam, to Tokyo, to Sao Paulo, and that shyness on my part is of no use. Same with designers solving problems on the growth funnel, had to negotiate with product designers who were building the Netflix product and be highly collaborative in their decision making. Why? Because for the customer, they don't care whether it's the growth team or the product team that's working on this initiative. And last but not the least, I believe, as I've been more and more solving problems for growth, that we always have to make this trade-off between that what's going to hit the bottom line, that what's going to make us more money, and that what is best for the customer's experience. So we are uniquely positioned to fight the good fight and be an advocate for the customer while still hitting the bottom line. So does the designer on my team have the ability to make ethical decisions? And this put together is a snapshot of how, as a design leader, you can invest in building the acumen for growth. The second one is structuring growth teams. It's something I'm asked many times on how do you structure the growth teams for when the initiative is starting. My takeaway is structure them around the areas of impact or the desired outcome. So a quick snapshot, At Pinterest, it looks like the moment in time when growth became important to them, they chose to structure the team around activation, unauthenticated experiences. They were going to dial into emails quite a bit to accomplish growth. Whereas at Netflix, what I've already walked you through, growth teams need to be nimble enough that they don't become permanent structures. They do need to be able to shift their composition based on what the next desired outcome or impact area is. And outside of this, what is also true is that growth teams are most successful when they are cross-functional pods, but they are highly aligned, loosely coupled, and the highly aligned vision is what really keeps the team humming along together. And again, design is uniquely positioned to make that happen. The third one, as obvious as this sounds. So I went really back and forth in terms of how I want to call this slide. But I do feel trust the design process is not so much to the design leaders in this audience, because I think the last 2 days have been about us embracing this. I would say, how can we as design leaders make sure that our non-design stakeholders can trust the design process, especially when it comes to driving sustained growth? There is this fear or meme out there that momentary wins, incremental wins is the only way to solve for growth. And as you've seen in at least the one story I've shared with you, that's not true. So with this, I want to dive into another question that I've asked often. So Chetana, what's the difference between building the product and growing the product? And I'm going to breeze through this. First and foremost, building the product, the team is focused on the entirety of the product. But for a team that's on growing the product, they'll focus on identified impact areas. On the right, we are looking at defining the product value, which is features and MVPs and unique value proposition. The growth team will focus on how do I connect this value to the users. The building team will focus on launching, completion, perfection. Then there will be an all hands and champagne and rah-rah. The growth team is shipping continuously to learn, and they have a certain level of scrappiness, comfort with it. And a favorite of mine that I've thrown in is, while this is minimally viable, this has got to be maximally lovable. So right there is a way in which you can look at the role that human-centered design plays, whether you're building a product or growing a product. At its core foundation, being a strong product designer is still relevant. Growth is a certain aptitude that can be added on it. This is just a quick snapshot of what the growth design process is. For many of us in the room who've been practicing this for years, I won't get into the detail. The thing that's unique with the growth team is writing hypotheses and the testing and learning, but otherwise pretty ubiquitous to any design problem solving. The last but not the least acumen for a design leader on a growth team is the ability to educate and evangelize the work that your growth team is doing. Not only their wins, but certainly their learnings, because as all of us noticed, most of us don't log out of Netflix. So it tends to be the forgotten part of the user experience from a product point of view, but it's really underestimated, and the morale is what gets hit. So for myself as a leader on the growth team, I learned this the hard way, and I figured out that in the all hands, in the rah-rah conversations about product and feature launches, I need to find a way in which to evangelize what the growth team is working on. One of the ways that I found really useful is when we did the roadmap planning, while the product teams had their OKRs and mission vision, I worked with the growth design team based on our roadmap to come up with what is our growth design team's mission statement going to be, and we were really beginning to broadcast and evangelize this so that when we had wins or failures in our testing, we could kind of hang it back to this mission statement. The other one that's really been useful is, this is one of the many artifacts. How should a growth team, and it's intentionally blurred off, you guys, because you don't want to get all the sauces from Netflix. I'll be in trouble. Evangelize the works and wins. How does a growth design team communicate the vision for the growth problem solving with non-design stakeholders and executives? So this is a very lightweight, intuitive way to walk our stakeholders through the day in the life of Rohini, one of our customers in the emerging markets, to just demonstrate to her what are some of the growth tactics and strategies we're going to be using by the end of 2019 or 2020. So there are many such design artifacts that a design leader on growth can pull out of our toolbox in order to evangelize the work that growth does. And all of this is possible because of our roots in a human-centered approach to design. So in summary, these are some of the levers that I have learned, just a few of them, for sustained growth. Invest in the acumen for growth, structure teams by areas of impact, trust the design process, and then evangelize the work. But what next? As I'm looking at the future trends that are shaping our business and our products, it's clear to all of us in this audience that it's going to be complex. From artificial intelligence to cloud computing to machine learning, hyper-personalization, our products and our businesses are getting pretty complex. And I do believe with that level of complexity in the products that we build, the growth team is going to be further challenged with how to communicate the value proposition of these experiences. I believe that growth teams will co-create business value with their customers eventually. And how are we going to do that without a human-centered approach to design? And so I feel that human-centered design is uniquely positioned to be a core competency for businesses, and we are therefore very well positioned to have that seat at the table. But I'm not yet done. 30 more seconds. I do want to leave all of us with this invitation and this question. At the end of the day, even in this Design Leadership Summit and all of us being here, what is the purpose of any business? And this is a quote by a gentleman, Sadhguru, one of India's 50 most influential people, himself a yogi, mystic, author. And as I read this quote, for me it was goosebumps, that the single purpose of doing any business in the world is human well-being. All other businesses and all other products and services we create are subsidiaries of this well-being. Whether it's Instagram, WhatsApp, Netflix, if they are not serving towards this goal, we're probably failing ourselves. Thank you very much. That's a community you can sign up on if you're interested in growth. I co-facilitate there. That's the website. And then, of course, tweets on Chetana Deorah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. That was